This is booked for drama, where stories burn, hearts break, the tea is always hot and never a part 2. Today we're diving into General, your wife doesn't want you anymore. Let's go. Chapter 1. One night, after mistakenly drinking spiked wine, my head swam and my steps wavered until I stumbled into the hotel room of the military's youngest General Colton Hayes. He was all broad shoulders, lean waist, and rock-hard abs. He didn't waste moves, every touch was deliberate, relentless, leaving me no chance to pull away. My legs trembled as I tried to slip off the bed, but he caught my ankle and dragged me back. For hours, he pushed me past my limits, until every muscle ached like my body might fall apart. When I woke, he was already dressed, his face hard as stone. Without a hint of hesitation, he handed me a document. I can't let this tarnish my career. The best solution is marriage. 5 years later, our marriage had become a hollow arrangement, civil, polite, and almost entirely absent. Even our son, Ethan, had been taken to live at Fort Sentinel's family housing area, raised under Colton's direct oversight. I'd assumed it was about discipline, toughening him up early, grooming him to follow in his father's footsteps. But on Ethan's 4th birthday, he looked up at me with bright, innocent eyes and said, "Mom, my birthday wish is for you and Dad to get divorced so Vanessa can be my new mom." The pieces fell into place. Colton's oversight wasn't about discipline, it was about keeping his old flame, Vanessa Cole, close to both of them. With a bitter smile, I pulled out the divorce agreement I drafted months ago. "All right," I said, "I'll give you exactly what you want." I slid the agreement across the table, my voice steady. "Ethan's birthday wish, I'm granting it. I'm giving up custody and walking away with nothing. The savings in the house will go to him. That's my way of making things right." Colton didn't even blink. Only when I tapped the table did he finally glance up, his eyes cool and unreadable. "What did you just say?" He was buried in a stack of military reports, and I realized he hadn't heard a single word. 5 years of marriage, and I was still invisible. Did he even know my full name, Madeline Carter? I was done being unseen. Flipping the agreement to the last page, I slid it toward him. "Just sign." His brow furrowed as he reached for the papers. Before he could read them, Ethan came bounding down the stairs. "Colt, Vanessa says she's taking me to the shooting range today." Vanessa Cole, major in the Fort Sentinel military band and Colton's first love. At her name, Colton's stern expression softened instantly. He closed the file and started to rise. I caught his wrist and pressed a pen into his hand. "Sign it. It won't keep you from your outing with Ethan and Major Cole." For the first time in years, he actually looked at me surprised, maybe even curious. This wasn't the compliant woman who'd chopped off her hair and shut down her live streams the moment he'd said, "You're the wife of a general. You need to carry yourself like one." "Colt," Ethan whined, "come on. If we make Vanessa wait, she'll get mad and you'll have to make it up to her again." "All right." Without another word, Colton took the pen and scrawled his signature without even glancing at the terms. I watched father and son walk away together. My lips twisted into a wry smile as I signed my name beside his. Our names had appeared together only twice in our lives, once at the county clerk's office, when he signed and rushed off to answer an urgent call, and now, when he left just as quickly. A tear splashed onto the paper. I wiped it away, tucked the agreement into a folder, and mailed a copy to the base records office. Then I went upstairs to pack. The closet was a monotony of plain dark dresses and a few crisp white blouses. No one here knew I loved bright colors, loud laughter, and chasing adrenaline. Before Colton, I'd been an outdoor adventure vlogger with millions of followers. But after our wedding, he'd shut it all down, citing base regulations. My climbing gear had gathered dust in storage. General Hayes needed the picture-perfect officer's wife, and I'd buried my true self to fit the mold. It earned me nothing, not even his respect. His fellow officers whispered, "A wild girl like her? She's no match for the general." Only the graceful, polished Vanessa Cole was considered worthy to stand at his side. The thought made my stomach churn. I bolted for the bathroom and threw up. When I finally looked up at my reflection, makeup perfect, hair immaculate, I knew divorce was the right call. I kicked open the storage room, pulled on my old rugged jacket, and called my best friend, Chloe Pierce. Chloe arrived fast, her expression puzzled. "You're free to hang out? Didn't you say a week ago you'd be spending your birthday with Colton and Ethan?" "Birthday?" I froze, checked my phone, and saw the reservation I'd made and the text I'd sent to Colton. Unread, unanswered, hurt, maybe once, not anymore. Perfect, I told Chloe. "Let's grab dinner, just us." But when we reached the restaurant, the manager blocked our way. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The venue's reserved tonight for a private military event, Major Cole's birthday. I'll refund your deposit in full." Chloe's smile turned sharp. "No need for a refund. This is the general's wife, nobody outranks her." Inside, laughter rang out. Ethan was on a chair, placing a paper crown on Vanessa's head. "Happy birthday, Vanessa. I hope you marry Colt and be my mom." Vanessa's smile was shy. Colton's eyes softened as he said, "Happy birthday. I hope you get everything you wish for." He didn't look away from her. Ethan fussed over her pouring juice, tucking a napkin into her collar. In 5 years, Colton had never remembered my birthday. The son I'd nearly died giving birth to had never even poured me a glass of water. Chloe trembled with anger. I squeezed her hand and whispered, "It's fine. I've already signed the divorce papers." On the drive back, Chloe slammed on the brakes and gripped the wheel, tears running down her cheeks. 5 years, Maddie. You gave up your passions, your career, your whole life revolved around them. Remember when we planned to climb in California? You hadn't even strapped in before Colton called, and you ran home to make him potato soup. When Ethan had that fever, you carried him 3 miles in the rain to the military medical center, caught pneumonia yourself, and never said a word. You gave them everything. And what did they do? Colton burned your wingsuit like it was trash. Now Ethan's calling another woman Mom. Her voice broke. If you need to cry, just cry. Cry? I'd cried enough when Colton's family pushed me into endless etiquette lessons and he brushed off my complaints. When I waited outside in the snow until midnight, only to learn he wasn't coming and hadn't bothered to tell me. When Ethan was burning with fever and Colton hung up on my desperate call. I had once dreamed of a loving husband and a devoted son. But they'd never truly seen me. 5 years was long enough. It was time to move on. Chapter 2. Madeline had hoped to avoid Colton until the divorce agreement was officially signed. But life had a way of throwing curveballs. The very next day, she ran into him at the International Climbing Championships. He was there with a delegation from the Army's Special Warfare Center, evaluating whether rock climbing could be incorporated into elite training programs. Dressed in sleek climbing gear, Madeline moved across the wall with the speed and grace of a predator. Her core was steel strong, her sun-bronzed skin slick with sweat. She dominated the competition, claiming the championship without breaking a stride. Colton's aide, Mark Davis, gaped at the scoreboard. General, is that Madeline? Damn, her climbing speed could give our best operators a run for their money. Colton lowered his binoculars, his jaw tightening. Around him, spectators were snapping photos, a whistle cut through the air, and someone shouted, Maddie, you're killing it. There she was perched on the summit, arms high in triumph, vibrant and fierce. A woman he barely recognized anymore. After the event, the organizers led him over for introductions. Madeline didn't miss a beat. She looked him straight in the eye, her tone polite and distant. General Hayes, your reputation precedes you. His expression stayed carved from stone. The silence stretched. Then a familiar voice broke in. Colt, you ready? Let's head back to Fort Sentinel for dinner. I'm craving that clam chowder your cook makes. Madeline turned to see Vanessa Cole step down from a military Humvee, strolling over with the ease of someone who belonged there. She slid her arm through Colton's as naturally as breathing. Vanessa barely spared Madeline more than a quick, dismissive smile like she wasn't even competition worth acknowledging. As the two of them walked off, someone nearby muttered, he even brings his wife along on assignments, guess they're inseparable. Mark, still lingering, shot Madeline a sidelong look. It wasn't cruel exactly, but it carried a quiet judgment, half pity, half disbelief. Madeline said nothing. She simply left the venue and, once outside, pulled out her phone. Her first call was to the county clerk's office to check on the processing of the divorce agreement. How much longer? She asked. 7 days, the clerk replied. 7 days, Madeline repeated, her voice steady. I've survived 5 years. I can survive 7 more days. That fragile sense of control lasted less than an hour. Her phone rang again. Mark. The general wants to know if you're sending anything over for dinner, he said. Also, Ethan's teacher said she hasn't been able to reach you. His art project for this week still hasn't been turned in. Could you drop it off? Madeline's mind flashed back to the nights before she left, sitting at the kitchen table with Ethan, carefully helping him piece that project together, one small detail at a time. She'd walked away before it was finished. She tilted her head back, watching clouds drift, free and unbound. Tell him there's nothing coming, she said, her voice calm but final. Not now, not ever. And I'm done with anything to do with Ethan's assignments. Don't call me again. She hung up, blocked Mark's number, and kept walking. Chapter 3. On Friday evening, my mother-in-law, Margaret Hayes, texted me out of nowhere. Madeline, this divorce is between you and Colton, but until it's finalized, my grandson will not be affected in any way. Affected? By what? Ethan was the one who'd urged me to divorce his dad in the first place. Before I could respond, more messages came rapid fire. Madeline, if you don't want this divorce to cause trouble, you'd better show up at the Hayes house this weekend to spend time with my grandson, same as always. Ever since Ethan was born, we'd made it a ritual to visit the Hayes house every weekend. And knowing Margaret's bulldozer personality, I wasn't about to invite another battle. So Saturday morning, I drove over, passing the neat, identical houses of the Fort Sentinel family housing area, the distant thud of military drills carrying on the wind. When I stepped inside the Hayes house, I froze. Colton was already there, sitting in the living room. In his pressed army dress uniform, posture rigid as always, he didn't even look at me. Ethan's in the study, working on a craft for Vanessa, he said flatly. Go help him. I scoffed under my breath and walked past without answering. As I passed the study, I found Ethan hunched over his desk, carefully sanding a bullet casing. My footsteps must have startled him, because he jerked his head up and just as quickly, he snatched the half-finished craft and hid it behind his back. This is for Aunt Vanessa, he snapped. The guarded glare in his eyes cut straight through me. Relax, I said, crouching so we were eye level. Mom's not here to steal anybody's gift. I forced a smile. When your dad marries Aunt Vanessa, you can give her whatever you want. Madeline. Colton's voice cracked like a whip behind me. He grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet, his eyes blazing. Is this how you talk as a mother? Running your mouth like that in front of our son? I tilted my head, studying the tense line of his jaw, and let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Guess I'm just not cut out to be Mrs. Hayes. Why don't you just marry Vanessa already? She's clearly better at parenting than I'll ever be. I turned and headed for the door. Madeline. His hand shot out, catching mine, his grip unyielding like there was more he wanted to say. But then Ethan's smartwatch chimed. Dad, it's Aunt Vanessa. She's video calling, he said, his voice lighting up. In an instant, Colton let go. I watched him stride over to answer, his face frozen and cold moments ago softening into a warm smile the second her face appeared on the screen. Without a word, I slipped into the guest room and locked the door. June sunlight streamed in through the thin slits of the curtains, but I felt as if I'd been buried under an avalanche, the cold biting all the way to my bones. I collapsed onto the bed, too drained to think, and shut my eyes, willing myself to sleep. In my dreams, I was 21 again, sobbing in front of a fire pit as my climbing gear went up in flames. Colton stood in the doorway, expression like stone. Military spouses can't engage in high-risk activities. It's the rule. The scene shifted to the day I gave birth to Ethan. Hours of agony, massive blood loss, a fractured pelvis. The doctors warned I might never handle intense physical activity again. Before that, I'd scaled glaciers, conquered the highest peaks in the world, plunged into the deep to swim alongside sharks. But one childbirth had wiped out every dream I'd ever had. In the dream, every version of me was crying, their voices overlapping, urging me, keep moving forward. Don't look back. I wouldn't. The moment I handed Colton the divorce agreement, I'd already steeled myself for a fight to the bitter end. Chapter 4. That night my dreams were a tangled blur, but the internal clock I'd trained over 5 years in Fort Sentinel's family housing still jolted me awake at 5 a.m. sharp. Back then, I'd be pressing Colton's dress blues or cooking Ethan a protein-packed breakfast. Now, I rolled over and let the sun pry my eyes open hours later. Downstairs, grabbing a quick bite, I overheard Colton's aides talking in the common area. General Hayes took Ethan to the shooting range, one said. Major Cole went along. You'd think they were the real family, the other muttered. Yeah, plenty of people thought so. And in the eyes of the Hayes clan and Colton himself, my own wants never factored in. My job was to smile, show up where a military spouse was expected to be, and take care of them without complaint. Last month, I finally called a lawyer. 5 days slipped by, then Chloe blew into my living room like a tornado. Get dressed. We're hitting the climbing gym, time to hunt for some eye candy. She winked. College athletes. Abs you could grate cheese on. The 20-somethings there had charm to spare, tossing playful, hey, gorgeous, lines our way. Chloe elbowed me, grinning. What do you think? Better than your ice-cold soldier boy, right? I laughed. Guess I should have come up for air sooner. That was all she needed to hear. Exactly. You should have ditched that marriage years ago. Any of these guys, hell, all of them, would treat you better than that cold-hearted bastard. She leaned in, voice low and teasing. Find yourself a young stud with stamina and you'll be set for life. I was about to crack a comeback when a cough cut through the noise. I turned and spotted Colton, with his adjutant Lucas Reed standing beside him. Lucas looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Colton, backlit by the sun, was as unreadable as ever, face carved in stone when it came to me. I grabbed Chloe's arm, ready to leave, certain he wouldn't care. But to my surprise, he stepped forward and caught my arm. There's a gathering I need you at. Let's go. Before I could protest, he steered me straight to his car. In the passenger seat, I sat frozen. Colton had always treated me like I was invisible, no interest, no opinion. The only time I'd seen this kind of force from him before had been behind closed doors. His voice broke the silence. You can't just sit around talking about blowing up a military marriage. It took me a beat to realize he'd heard every word with Chloe. I let out a sharp laugh. So I'm supposed to stay in this miserable cage forever? For the first time, I met his gaze head on, ice in my stare. He held my eyes for several long seconds, then said nothing. Fine. I closed mine and leaned back, feigning sleep. When we arrived, I realized it was a private get-together with his friends, a world he'd never brought me into before. Not that I cared. Most of them had written me off years ago as some small-town girl who'd never belong. So I kept my face neutral, drank my wine, and stayed quiet. After a few glasses, I excused myself to the restroom. The moment I was gone, the questions came. Colt, what's with your wife? No smile, and she gave you attitude. Yeah, I heard you're getting divorced. Is that true? Colton's brow tightened. Who said I'm getting divorced? I married her. She's my wife for life. Noah Smith blinked. You're serious? Colton just gave him a look. Noah's tone shifted. You remember Brigadier General Thompson from West Coast Naval Base? Same as you, barely acknowledged his wife, practically lived at the base. No one even knew he was married. She finally walked, divorced him. Word is, he's still chasing her. He leaned forward. If you're planning on keeping Madeline around, you'd better start paying attention. Otherwise, don't be surprised if she pulls a Mrs. Thompson on you. Colton's glass stilled midair. His voice stayed cool. She won't. Meanwhile, in the restroom, my phone buzzed. Ms. Carter, your divorce decree is finalized. You can pick it up at the county clerk's office. Chapter 5. The day I'd been waiting for finally came. I practically ran to the county clerk's office, my heart hammering as I clutched the divorce decree, the piece of paper I'd been dreaming about for years. I read it over and over, letting each word sink in until the weight of 10 years dropped from my shoulders. No more snapping to attention whenever Colton Hayes gave an order. No more enduring the Hayes family's judgmental glares. No more picking at salads to keep up appearances or plastering on smiles at their stiff, soul-sucking events. I was free. Free to bungee jump, tear down a racetrack, travel wherever I pleased, free to do everything a model military wife wasn't supposed to. Outside, Chloe hooked her arm through mine and steered me straight toward the Rusty Spur, a rowdy dive bar with a mechanical bull in the corner. Beer, barbecue, fried chicken tonight, you eat whatever you want, she said with a wicked grin. The smoky tang of grilled meat hit me, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. We drank until the room spun, danced until our legs gave out, and laughed like maniacs in the parking lot so hard that tears streaked down my cheeks. The chains I'd been dragging for a decade finally snapped. Buzzed on liquor and freedom, I scrolled through my contacts, unblocked Ethan's number, and hit call. Ethan Hayes, I said, voice sharp, you might not like me, but I'm still your mother. I nearly died giving birth to you. When you were sick, I was the one sitting up all night at your bedside. But the moment you called me vicious because of Vanessa, you stopped being my son and you don't get to call me mom anymore. Colton's voice came over the line instead, cold and cutting. Madeline, what the hell are you talking about? I froze, then let out a bitter laugh. Maybe keep a tighter leash on your kid, General. On his birthday, he told me to divorce you so Vanessa could take my place. That was the longest conversation we ever had. So congratulations, you both got what you wanted. I hung up and blocked the number again. Done. For good. The next morning, head pounding from a hangover, I booked an international flight without a second thought. Once the divorce news spread, I knew my father would come storming in to drag me back to the Hayes house to apologize. Not this time. I packed light, zipped my suitcase, and opened the door only to find Colton standing there with Ethan, both looking tense under the thrum of helicopters circling Fort Sentinel. Ethan, Colton said, voice low but firm, apologize to your mother. Ethan's shoulders hunched as he muttered, I'm sorry, Mom. I shouldn't have said those things or told you to get divorced, will you forgive me? Don't worry about it, I said with a faint smile. I'd already said everything that needed saying. There was nothing left to tie me here. Colton's tone softened, rare for him. I'm sorry, Maddie, I didn't raise Ethan right. That's on me. I almost laughed. An apology from General Colton Hayes, now that was a first. But one, sorry, couldn't erase years of damage. I handed him a small box I'd prepared. If you really mean that, drive me to the airport. This is my parting gift to you. Open it an hour after I'm gone. He took it, brows knitting. Where are you going? I smirked. Why, am I not allowed to have my own light? He was the one who'd locked me in that cage years ago. Now he could be the one to open the door. The drive to the airport was silent. As I turned to leave, Colton's voice dropped again. Come back soon, Maddie. I gave him a small, hollow smile and walked into the terminal without looking back, the flicker of defiance in my chest burning hotter than the ache beneath it. I wasn't coming back. This place had no room for my freedom. At the airport, Colton waited with Ethan, the box still in his hands. An hour later, Ethan pried it open. Inside, the divorce decree lay flat and final. Dad, this is the gift? Ethan's voice shook. The words hit Colton like a bolt from the blue. His hands trembled as he remembered his friend No's warning. If Maddie's heart ever goes cold, she'll leave you for good. He started firing off texts. What's with the divorce decree? Is this some kind of joke? Text me when you land. Ethan and I are worried. Every message went unanswered. He called his aide, Lucas, who confirmed I'd booked an international flight with a connecting leg that couldn't be traced. The decree? He'd signed it himself without realizing. I'd left with nothing, signing over every asset to Ethan as child support. Madeline, what the hell are you so unhappy about? He muttered into the empty air of his study, the walls lined with Fort Sentinel commendations seeming to close in. Then Vanessa called, claiming Ethan had been kidnapped. When Colton arrived, he found her at the military medical center, holding Ethan protectively, scratches on her arms, her expression fragile and wounded. The scene was picture perfect, but something didn't add up. Colton ordered a full investigation. Within days, the truth came out: Vanessa had staged the kidnapping herself. Colton stared at the evidence, silent and cold. Then he gave the order, bury it. Tell the public she saved Ethan. Then send her abroad permanently. Vanessa's tears came fast. Colton, please, don't do this. I only looked after you because my brother asked me to be on his deathbed, he cut in, voice like ice. I've never had feelings for you. Her face went pale. No matter how hard she cried, he didn't look back. Chapter 6. Far away in Nepal, I had no idea what was happening back home. I'd built a new life at the foot of the Himalayas, running an adventure school that taught tourists how to survive in the wild. By day, I led them up sheer, ice-crusted cliffs. By night, I sat by the campfire, teaching myself Tibetan and Nepali. 3 years in, UNESCO reached out, offering me a contract as a wilderness survival consultant. My marriage was like an avalanche buried so deep under miles of ice that I thought it would never see daylight again. Until the day the base radio crackled to life. Coach Carter, we've been asked to bring you in for a high-altitude joint training exercise. Your contact arrives tomorrow. My chest tightened. Which base? Fort Sentinel Special Operations. General Hayes will be commanding the mission. Clang. My ice axe slipped from my hand and hit the ground. The helicopter touched down in a blast of snow that stung my face. The door slid open, and Colton Hayes jumped out, combat boots biting into the frozen earth. 6 years had passed. His jawline was sharper than the edge of a glacier, and the general's star on his shoulder caught the light like a blade. Beside him stood his new aide, Julian Hart, all easy charm. Sir, this is the internationally renowned Coach Carter. He shot me a quick wink. Coach, the general came all the way out here just for you. I offered a hand roughened and scarred from frostbite. A pleasure, General Hayes. He took it and didn't let go. His grip was firm, lingering. I frowned, trying to pull free. Care to explain that, General? Julian stepped in with a grin. Guess the general's already impressed. Colton's lips curved into the faintest smirk. Indeed, that evening, I sat beside him, walking him through the essentials of surviving in sub-zero conditions. Snowstorms and bitter cold didn't rattle me. Colton listened without interrupting, head tipped slightly, eyes steady and locked on mine. It stirred something in my chest I didn't want to name. In 5 years of marriage, he had never listened to me like this. Those years, trapped in a cage of indifference, were gone for good. When we parted, the storm was still howling. I tightened my scarf and was about to climb into the vehicle when his voice cut through the wind. Madeline Carter. I stopped, but didn't turn. You don't have anything you want to say to me? There was an edge to his voice, something dangerously close to hurt. I've covered everything in the briefing. Nothing more to add, I said, keeping my tone cool. He closed the distance in 2 strides, urgency in his voice. You left without a word, signed the divorce papers like it meant nothing. Did you ever think about Ethan? 6 years, Maddie. He's 9 now. Don't you miss him? I turned, snow collecting on my shoulders, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Miss a kid who couldn't care less about what his mother sacrificed. Why the hell would I? He's probably got a new mom by now. Colton's brow knit as he stepped closer, his tone softening in a way I almost didn't recognize. Ethan was just a boy. He didn't know how to show it. And there's never going to be another mom. You're it. I let out a short laugh. They always remembered Vanessa's birthday, made her little gifts. They knew how to love. Just not me. In the swirling snow, our shadows stretched long under the lamplight, the weight of the past pressing in. And I had the sinking feeling this was only the beginning. Chapter 7. Madeline leaned casually against her car, studying Colton Hayes with deliberate calm. She couldn't help wondering, if she were still Mrs. Hayes, would he be standing here like this speaking more to her now than he ever had during their 5-year marriage? A wry smile tugged at her lips, and she shook her head. Colton's brow furrowed. What's so funny? Unbothered by his gaze, her smile sharpened with a hint of mockery. Don't you laugh when you hear something ridiculous? Colton, divorce or not, we're not the type to sit around swapping old stories. You barely knew me then, and I have no interest in digging through the past. She didn't wait for his reply or for him to say whatever was clearly hovering on his tongue. Sliding into her car, she fired up the engine and sped off. Back home, she washed up and all but collapsed into bed. His sudden reappearance had stirred up memories she'd worked years to bury. For 5 years, she'd poured herself into being the perfect wife and mother, never once living for herself. In the 6 years since leaving Fort Sentinel, she'd hidden away in a cabin deep in the Rockies, chasing the adventurous life she'd missed. She rarely thought about the past until tonight, when he'd forced it all back into the light. Curling under the blanket, she rolled over and drifted into a heavy sleep. The sharp barking of a neighbor's hunting dog tore her awake sometime after midnight. The lingering images of Colton's cold stare and Ethan's guarded expression faded. She pulled on a robe and went to the window. To her surprise, Colton was standing outside her front door, bundled in a black coat. His aide was nowhere in sight, unusual for a general. In a Rockies winter, with the temperature well below zero, he'd freeze solid if he stayed there much longer. She had no idea what he was doing, but she opened the door anyway. The last thing she wanted was the headache of a frozen general on her porch. By the fire, she handed him a mug of coffee. His fingers, red and stiff from the cold, trembled around the cup. After a long moment, he managed a faint smile. Thanks. Something in her chest gave a small jolt. He had almost never smiled at her before, his default was a. Her frown returned. What the hell are you doing here? She said with a cool, distant reserve. He lowered his gaze. Frost melted from his lashes in tiny droplets. I want to know why we got divorced. She stared at him at the open confusion on his face, and a mix of emotions swirled in her chest. So, her 5 years of struggle had meant nothing to him. You don't know why we divorced? Her voice was flat. That's exactly why we did. He went still, rare uncertainty clouding his eyes. Colton Hayes had always been privileged, focused, expecting the world to move to his rhythm. Maybe she'd been one of the few disruptions he'd never accounted for. Her throat tightened, but she forced it down. Before the divorce, I told you over and over. Since you and Ethan both wanted Vanessa, I agreed to the divorce, gave up custody, and walked away with nothing but my freedom. I signed everything over to Ethan as support. I spelled it all out for you. Do you remember any of that? His grip on the mug tightened. The blank look in his eyes told her everything he didn't remember. She almost laughed at herself for expecting otherwise. Back then, he'd never really listened to her. She'd been nothing more than a placeholder, his wife on paper, a homemaker, Vanessa's stand-in caretaker. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I honestly don't remember. Maybe I was buried in work. But is that really the reason you left? I can't accept that. Oh? Then what about coming home every night smelling like her perfume? Is that enough for you? He froze, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Vanessa, you divorced me because of her? Her mouth curved in a humorless smile. You came home every night smelling like her. Ethan kept telling me he wanted her to be his new mom. Was I supposed to cling to the title of Mrs. Hayes just to keep pretending? I wasn't going to be a wife in name only. His lashes trembled, as if he hadn't expected her to say that, or maybe because he'd never cared enough to notice her feelings in the first place. But to her, the reason was simple. He'd liked Vanessa enough to remember her birthday, plan surprises, and actually listen to her. His love had never been hers. By 4:30 a.m., exhaustion was setting in, and she moved to show him the door until he said, clearly and without hesitation, I'm sorry. She froze, his gaze steady on hers as he repeated, I'm sorry. I didn't see how much I was hurting you. That was my fault. A laugh slipped out before she could stop it. Making the almighty Colton Hayes apologize now, that was a rare feat. And yet, a quiet melancholy settled in her chest. Saying it all out loud, laying bare the small, constant wounds of their marriage, maybe even he could see she had been hurt. She pressed a hand to her chest, the weight there easing just a little. Maybe this was what letting go felt like. But I didn't cheat, and I don't have feelings for Vanessa, he said suddenly, guilt and something like longing flickering in his eyes. I looked after her because it was my brother's dying wish. When people called her Mrs. Hayes, I didn't correct them because, if he'd lived, she would have been his Mrs. Hayes. She waved a hand dismissively. It doesn't matter anymore. Yes, it does, he said, the words quick and sharp, as if afraid she might walk away before he finished. You've been gone for 6 years. Ethan and I missed you. I want to clear the air and bring you back to the family. A stunned laugh burst out of her. Bring her back? After 10 years of clawing her way to freedom, he thought she'd return to being a live-in nanny and housekeeper? I've built my own life since the divorce. Why the hell would I go back? If you feel guilty about your brother and want to take care of Vanessa, that's on you, but leave me out of it. I don't owe you, or her, or anyone else a damn thing. He opened his mouth to speak, but she yanked the door open, letting the icy wind and swirling snow rush in. Get out, she said coldly. Don't make me say it twice. Chapter 8. After Colton left, I tossed and turned all night, sleeping nowhere in sight. By dawn, I dragged myself to work only to be blindsided. A staffer from the Joint Training Center Ridgeview Personnel Office pulled me aside, his voice heavy. General Hayes is heading a military exchange in East Asia. They need a translator, and I recommended you. When it's over, you can hitch a ride back home on a C-130 to visit family. A dozen thoughts shot through me at once. I'll handle it, I said, but I kept my face cool. The exchange itself went smoothly. Colton was exactly what I remembered: professional, flawless, untouchable. When it wrapped, he found me. Maddie, work's done. Come home with me. See Ethan? He misses you. Misses me? I gave a dry laugh, the old sting flaring. He never liked me. It's been 6 years, if anything, he probably hates me now. He's got his heart set on Vanessa as his mom, I snapped. If you're so eager to fulfill your brother's dying wish, marry her. Neat and tidy. That afternoon, Colton, the delegation, and I boarded a military charter home. The seating chart wedged us together, just an armrest apart. Exhausted, I turned away, refusing to meet his eyes. Not long after, a blanket settled over me, his touch careful, almost tentative. I didn't acknowledge it. He'd once been everything to me, and also my cage. The divorce had cut that cord clean. We landed, and in the waiting area I spotted Ethan, hand in Margaret Hayes' grasp. At 9, he'd shot up a few inches, his eyes red and swollen. The second he saw me, he blurted, "Mom." The delegation glanced at one another, uneasy. I put on a polite smile. Looks like someone's confused me with his mom. Colton's face hardened instantly. He'd heard every word. Ethan tried to run to me, but Margaret held him back, her gaze sharp with unspoken intent. I knew she'd never give us a genuine moment. Whatever game she was playing, I wasn't interested. Colton pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. Do you have to talk like that, Maddie? I met his eyes, cold. Don't like it? Then we don't have to talk. I grabbed my bags and walked straight past him. The Hayes family home wasn't mine anymore. Later, I met up with Chloe. She grabbed my hands, spinning me once before grinning wide. This is the Maddie I remember. 6 years, and you're finally you again. I'm so damn happy. We were still laughing when my phone rang, unknown number. A woman's voice came through. This is Ethan's teacher. He got into a fight at school, and his father told me to call you. Chloe's face darkened. She snatched the phone and hung up. What the hell is Colton thinking? It rang again. The teacher sounded urgent. The other kid's parents insist you pick him up and take him to the hospital. With no choice, Chloe and I drove straight to Maple Grove Elementary. In the teacher's office, every other kid had a parent beside them except Ethan, standing alone. The injured boy's parents jabbed a finger at him. Didn't your mom teach you not to hit people? A boy nearby snickered. Ethan doesn't have a mom. She ditched him. Ethan's eyes flared. He lunged like a cornered pup, only to be shoved back by the parent and hit the floor. When he saw me in the doorway, his eyes went glassy. He bit down hard, turned away, and scrambled up without wiping his face. I ignored the act and stepped forward. I'm Madeline Carter, his biological mother. We're divorced. I don't have custody. If you want compensation, talk to his father, General Colton Hayes. Ethan's head snapped up, shock flashing across his face. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught him swiping quickly at his eyes, hoping no one saw. Why the tears now? This was the same boy who once begged me to leave his dad. The other parent's bluster faltered. Divorced or not, you still owe us an explanation, don't? I looked straight at Ethan. Why'd you fight? He jutted his chin out, silent. My patience wore thin. Not talking? Fine. Wait for your dad. I've got better things to do. His voice broke into a roar. They said I don't have a mom. You happy now? It's your fault Dad won't marry Vanessa. She actually cares about me unlike you. I hate you. I let him finish before arching a brow. When your dad and I were still married, you wanted her as your mom. Fine. We're divorced now, pick whoever you want. Gasps rippled through the room. No wonder she doesn't have custody, someone muttered. A kid that young, already meddling in their parents' marriage? Another whispered, I thought Vanessa was Mrs. Hayes. Turns out she's just the girlfriend? Ethan flinched at the words, bolting for the door, but he stopped short, retreating as Colton strode in with his aide. His expression was cold enough to silence the room. What happened? He asked, voice low and sharp. No one spoke. Even Ethan ducked his head, suddenly small. I met Colton's gaze coolly. You're here. Handle it, you're the guardian. I'm leaving. Maddie. Mom. Their voices trailed one after another, but I didn't look back. In the car, Chloe exploded. That ungrateful kid doesn't deserve you. After you left, he threw tantrums demanding Vanessa as his new mom. Colton smacked him for it, and he ran off, nearly got kidnapped. Guess who saved him? Vanessa. Perfect little bond they've got there. Chapter 9. After leaving Maple Grove Elementary, Chloe and I headed for our usual haunt, the Rusty Spur. The whiskey slid down my throat in a fiery rush, taking the edge off the knot of frustration sitting in my chest. Chloe swirled her glass, lips curling into a smirk. So, Colton Hayes is finally sweating it, huh? Back when you were coughing up blood with pneumonia, he didn't even bother to pick up the damn phone. I stared at the condensation trailing down my glass, and without warning, I was back in that hospital room, the shrill beep of the monitor, the cold sting of the IV in my arm. The day I gave birth, Colton had been halfway across the world on a mission. His only response was a curt message to his aide, Lucas, tell the doctors to prioritize the kid. Let's not talk about him, I muttered, tossing back the rest of my drink. Tomorrow, I'm heading back to Nepal. We'd barely stepped outside when a military Humvee screeched to a halt in front of us. Colton jumped out, combat boots splashing through a puddle. His uniform jacket hung open, his t-shirt beneath it plastered with sweat. He'd come straight from the training field at Fort Sentinel. We need to talk, he said, gripping my wrist hard enough to make it clear he thought I'd run. Yanked free. Colt, that strong arm tactic doesn't work on me anymore. His jaw tightened, the muscle in it twitching. Then, without a word, he pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. My breath caught. It was the climbing gear list he'd burned years ago, every single item replaced, each with a handwritten compensation amount and date. I bought it all back, he said, voice low and rough, like gravel. The full set's in a locker at Fort Sentinel. Figured you'd want it if you ever came back. For a moment, I couldn't move. Under the wash of moonlight, the man who'd always seemed untouchable suddenly looked cracked. When had General Hayes learned what it meant to come undone? Too late, I said, stepping back. Colt, some things once they're burned don't come back. Just like the last flicker of hope I'd ever had for him. Gone, reduced to ash, along with the life we could have built. Chapter 10. The next day at JFK International Airport, Chloe was crying her eyes out. Next time we meet, I want to watch you conquer K2 live on stream. She shoved my climbing pack into my arms. And find yourself a younger guy who can keep up with you. I laughed and nodded, but as I turned toward the gate, I caught sight of a small head peeking out from behind a terminal pillar. Ethan stepped out, clutching a small ammo crate Dad had helped him turn into a piggy bank at the range. He hesitated, then held it out to me. Mom, this is for you. The crate was heavy, filled with spent training bullet casings, each etched with a date. The very first one read Mom's birthday, a gift. I'd never received it during my marriage. Dad took me to the range at Fort Sentinel, Ethan mumbled, scuffing his shoe against the floor. He said, you can shake it when you miss me. The boarding call echoed over the speakers. I crouched down to meet his gaze. Take care of yourself, okay? Suddenly, he threw his arms around my neck, holding on tight. I told them a lie. I don't want Vanessa to be my mom. Warm tears soaked into my collar. That kidnapping. It was her idea. Dad kicked her out. I froze. From the shadows, Colton emerged, sharp in his military uniform, holding a familiar velvet box, the same one I'd used to hand him the divorce papers years ago. Madeline, he said, opening the box to reveal a ring forged from a melted bullet casing. After you left, I realized. Stop. I cut him off. Don't give me that, I regret everything, speech. His Adam's apple shifted, but he changed tack. There's a Global Special Forces Skills Challenge next month. And, he said, adjusting the straps of my climbing pack, I'll be waiting for you at the finish line. 3 months later, in Kathmandu, Nepal. At the UNESCO commendation ceremony, I accepted the Wilderness Rescue Medal. Applause thundered through the hall, and as the cameras swept over the audience, a tall figure in casual clothes caught my eye. Colton wasn't in uniform. The black turtleneck sharpened his already striking features. He held a sleeping Ethan in one arm, while his other hand lifted a glowing digital banner with my old livestream slogan, Maddie's mission, leave no trace. I leaned into the microphone and smiled. Finally, I want to thank my starting point. The big screen shifted to a grainy video of my first climb up Wyoming's Devil's Tower at 22, clinging to the rock face and shouting into the wind, what's life for if not freedom and love? The feed cut back to the present. I locked eyes with Colton. But someone taught me that true freedom isn't about running away. After the ceremony, he was waiting at the lounge door. What did you mean by that? I tossed him a form instructor qualification for the International Joint Military Training at Ridgeview. Do you approve of it or not? He stepped forward, pinning me against the wall, his breathing heavy. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Yep. I poked him in the chest. General Hayes, this time, I'm setting the rules. Outside, the first rays of dawn pierced the Himalayan peaks. It felt like that snowy night years ago, only this time, I was the one holding the rope. The end. And that's a wrap on today's reading here at Booked for Drama. If you felt anything, rage, swoon, secondhand heartbreak, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow drama lovers. If you have any requests, drop them in the comments. Until next time, keep reading, and keep the drama on the page.